7294, 7295, 7296, 7358, 7359.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll hold the bill for further study.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chairman, and yourself and this committee. I believe we passed this legislation last year, which I'm very thankful for, because a piece of legislation I've been putting in for a number of years. So some folks would be like, why is Representative Slater submitting this legislation from Providence for captive hunting? But number of years back, when I was up here, I think at one point, I think it might have been Representative Ucci that submitted legislation to allow captive hunting in I think it was at the preserve up in Exeter, which was something they wanted and became. So a lot of folks that live in my district that are passionate about animals and wildlife and not only animals, but what I found from doing this bill is that it's so important to our environment outside of just the humanity of the bill about taking animals from a different environment and putting them in a captive area and hunting them. It's just inhumane, for one thing, right, from my perspective. But outside of that, it can be catastrophic to the environment between the different diseases that they can bring to our area and the devastation that they, like, for example, if a wild boar was brought here from another location and got out of the captive area, the devastation it could do to our wetlands, and not only that, just deer, the chronic wasting disease that they bring just from, so this bill makes sense, and I appreciate you guys passing it. I have other folks that are here from, I've been working a lot with Michael Woods, who's testified for many years on this bill, from the hunters, backwoods hunters, and he's very supportive of this bill. They've written articles about this bill. Yourself, Chairman, you've been very supportive on this, and I think you put in a version of this bill on your own before, and I just appreciate the support, and I appreciate, hopefully this year we can get this banned in Rhode Island, and I think it'll be great for our state and just for, in general, this is a good policy to have on the books. And there's actually, Chairman, there's going to be a sub-A to clarify some of the language in this. There is an exception here for pheasants, you know, like the gaming, the hunting on that. And I think there's some language. Mike Woods has been working closely, so he could probably get into specifics of the amendment and some of the other more important aspects of this and why the backwood hunters support this as well. So
Whatever makes for a better bill. I appreciate it, Representative. Any questions for the representative? Seeing none, thank you very much.
thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Okay, so we have a list of people that are talking, but before we go to the people, we have 5 pieces of written testimony that would be on the website now. So people that want to view certain people's positions in that and why they feel that way, you can go to the legislative website and read it up there. We have Dr. Hans Scholl is in favor of the bill but not speaking. Ryan Mulcahy from DEM is in favor of the bill and not speaking. First up to speak would be Michael Woods, and next will be Kate Sales. And then we also have Bob, looks like Gilbury, or can't fully read it, or Gilligan, or he's in favor of it but not speaking, from Humane Society. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Michael Woods. I'm here today on behalf of the New England chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, where I serve as the chair of New England's chapter board. I'm here today in support of 7294. And before I give you a couple of the reasons, I wanted to just clearly explain what this bill would do. It's a simple bill. It would define captive hunting. It would prohibit the practice of captive hunting and the release of animals for this purpose in the state of Rhode Island. And it would also prohibit the importation of wildlife for conducting captive hunts into the state of Rhode Island. We wrote this bill specifically so that it would prohibit things that are not currently legal or practiced in Rhode Island, but they occupy an undefined area of Rhode Island's general laws, and our intention was not to affect or to prohibit things that are currently done by businesses here in Rhode Island, like releasing pheasants on shooting preserves or conducting field trials with dogs, training activities and things like that. And so the sub-A that Representative Slater mentioned is going to better clarify that those activities that are currently legal in Rhode Island would not be affected should this bill be passed by the legislature into law. I did submit extensive written testimony, as I have in prior years, and I know that this committee has heard this bill repeatedly, so I won't go too deep down the rabbit hole, but I do want to mention that our most prominent concern with captive hunting as a practice is that when wildlife are moved around, they tend to bring diseases with them, and chronic wasting disease is the most complicated of these. Currently, actually, when I started working on this issue, there were only 24 states in the country that had chronic wasting disease endemic in their native deer populations. That number over the last 4 years has increased to 32 states, with Florida and Kentucky detecting CWD in wild deer for the first time in the last 12 months. So this really is a problem, and it's spreading primarily when people move deer around. For example, from a breeding facility to a captive hunting facility. And so what this bill would do, the reason that we support it is because it would keep these costly and complicated issues out of Rhode Island. We've never detected CWD here, and as you probably know, we also don't have a population of wild pigs that are native, that are running around the landscape causing problems, and we want to make sure that we never have these things in Rhode Island. So by passing these bills, we would give ourselves the best chance to make sure that our wildlife managers here, our Fish and Wildlife Agency, don't have to face these issues that are causing problems in so many other parts of the country. As Scott mentioned, this committee and ultimately the entire House passed this bill actually unanimously last year, and we were very appreciative of that. We're hoping for a similar result this year and working hard in the Senate to make sure that they pass it as well so that we can finally put this issue behind us. With that, I am happy to take any questions that the committee has.
Representative Kislak.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Representative Slater, for championing this bill, and thank you for coming and presenting it. I have two questions about the proposed amendments. What is the difference between domestic and upland birds? Because DEM has recommended editing upland to read domestic.
So the reason that change is appropriate, and we agree with it, is because the terminology domestic game birds is used elsewhere in Title 2019. Upland birds isn't mentioned anywhere in that title. So what that change does is really unify the language in this bill should it go into general laws with everything else that is currently in Rhode Island general laws.
Thank you. And my second question is about the second proposed amendment, which it sounds like everyone's in agreement about, but I just don't understand it enough. It talks about allowing hounds to, as field trials, to go and capture primarily rabbits, I think, from reading the testimony. And I guess my question is the proposed amendment narrow enough that it won't accidentally allow deer, genetically modified moose, or other animals that we intend to prohibit from importation?
So field trials are described elsewhere in Title 20. And generally speaking, field trials don't involve the killing of an animal ultimately. They're more for training activities or things like, contests on, how good your dog is at finding birds, that kind of thing. So we were comfortable including this language and that it wouldn't eventually affect other species that might be hunted, because field trials in their definition don't involve the killing of animals as you would in a hunt. It's more of a training or a contest. And again, the intention in this bill was to not affect activities that are currently legal, and really field trials are permitted by the department. So there's also a regulatory layer that that makes sure that things are done in accordance with the best practices and the best science. And so we were comfortable including that language, knowing that field trials were far enough away from what what the bill seeks to define a captive hunt as. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and I guess that my question is, when we're thinking about what the sub-A is going to say, do we need to be specific and narrow and say, and specifically exclude importation of species or genetically modified species for field trials? And I don't know the answer, but I'm just hoping we consider that.
I don't know the answer as well, but I will comment that I'm not aware of any instances where animals are being imported for field trials, and so it hadn't even occurred to me, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you if you'd like me to.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, you can go on.
Ms. Sales, and then if we could have Angela Tuoni come up and speak too. That would be the last person that's going to speak today. So, Ms. Sales?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Kate Sales. I'm the director of the Rhode Island Land Trust Council. Thank you for having me to testify this evening. We are in support of this legislation. The Rhode Island Land Trust Council is the state coalition of all 50-plus land trusts. Land trusts are small community-based organizations that work really hard to steward and protect open spaces, farms, forests, landscapes that we all appreciate in the state of Rhode Island. We are mostly all volunteer organizations, and this bill is really important to us because if we did allow captive hunting, we would face a management issue that would be very difficult to deal with as a bunch of all volunteer land managers on the ground. We support this bill because it prohibits both captive hunting and the importation of animals. I submitted my written testimony, and Mike did a really good job of explaining the ins and outs of why this is important. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions, but I feel pretty good. So. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Miss, and I hope I didn't butcher your name, but Miss
Tuoni.
Tuoni.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Angela Tuoni. I am here on behalf of the Nature Conservancy in Rhode Island chapter. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to voice our support for this bill 7294. For those of you who don't know, the Nature Conservancy is a global organization committed to preserving the land and water on which all life depends. In Rhode Island, we steward over 14,000 acres and protect an additional 35,000 acres with partner organizations all in Rhode Island. That makes us one of the state's largest land trusts, which means that we are committed to protecting wild areas, including the wildlife that live in those areas. You've heard a lot of good information already tonight. I don't want to be redundant, but I do want to echo some of the concerns already brought up from my conservation peers. And the Nature Conservancy is very concerned about the spread of disease, including chronic wasting disease, which you've heard we don't have any known cases in Rhode Island. It is very contagious and it is lethal. Captive hunting would sort of invite the importation of animals, native or non-native, and kind of opens the door to the spread of harmful diseases and poses an unnecessary risk to our wildlife that calls this state home. So again, the Nature Conservancy supports this bill, and thank you for the time. Happy to take questions.